Hello. Welcome back to Let's Talk Ray Bradbury. If you've not subscribed to our channel, please do. Here on Let's Talk Ray Bradbury, we are currently working through the collection, The Stories of Ray Bradbury. We are up to tale number 59 of 100, which is A Medicine for Melancholy from 1959. The way I do these videos is I usually begin with a short synopsis, and then I get to the end and I share my thoughts and sort of interpretation, what I think the story means and what makes it relatable to me and to the present day, despite these stories being now, in many cases, 70, 80 years old. So for the synopsis, we are in London, 1762. Camilla Wilkes lays weak in bed, surrounded by her family and an incessant parade of doctors coming in and out offering their cures. She's had all manner of absurd cures tried on her and different diagnoses, and her parents are pretty convinced that she's going to die, and so is she for that matter. Her brother James, though, he recommends taking her outside to the streets, which her mother thinks is absurd, and her parents, and they don't really want the public gawking at their sick child. But ultimately they relent, and when they get out there, lo and behold, the passerbys, sort of being lonely people who are eager for any chance to talk to people, begin offering their suggestions and their diagnoses, and seem to, despite not knowing this girl, they think they know what's wrong with her because they've seen it other places. They get people passing by right and left, and finally, Jamie, the brother, stumbles on the idea, maybe we should charge these people to offer their suggestions, and we'll clear up this mob and get them in an orderly line, and maybe they'll just go away. So they do this. They begin charging 2 pence per person. Eventually, 200 people have passed by with their diagnoses and their suggested cures. And the cures are all absurd. As well as the diagnosis, one person says that she probably has vapors, which is gas. Another says she has something called lung flux. And then there's even an old lady who suggests that they give her a drink made of ground up mummy parts, which is just bizarre. The day is finally coming to an end. Still no cure, when finally a young man, he described as a dust man covered in soot. I'm assuming that makes him a chimney sweep, perhaps. He comes by and he says, this looks very familiar to something that my sister had. What we did for her was we took her outside where she's at, but we left her outside by the moonlight, and that seemed to do the trick. Her parents think this is ridiculous. Why would you do that? But ultimately, they relent, and she stays out there, and the moon comes out over London. In the shadows, she hears music playing, and finally a young man strolls up playing a lute, and he says that a friend of mine said that you were out here, maybe you were in need of cheering up. Camilla soon realizes that the man playing the lute is in fact the dust man who she'd met earlier. And they begin talking, and lo and behold, she begins to smile and to feel good. The next morning, her parents look down from the window expecting to find her dead, laying out there, but in fact they find her sleeping peacefully. Her cheeks are now rosy red, she's no longer pale, and she's smiling as she dreams. So, this is essentially another Ray Bradbury comedy. There's not a hint of science fiction or speculative fiction here to be found. And I was surprised as I've read 159 different Ray Bradbury short stories, and a surprising number of those stories are not, in fact, science fiction or fantasy or horror, where I think a lot of people sort of assume that all of his stuff is. This is, in fact, a sort of a period comedy. So, Bradbury was writing in 1959. Medicine and psychology at that time was definitely better than it was in 1762 when the story takes place. While in 2022, I'm not sure that we've, despite having a lot of fancy new drugs and a lot of resources, I'm not sure that psychology is very much better than it was in 1959 for that matter. But as it still remains today, I think somebody's depressed, and if you're not depressed and you don't quite get this situation, you might think that, this is simple, just smile, fake it till you make it, get out there and live life, and depression's not real, and all these things like that. And I think this story is very much about that, and it's about hypochondria as well, but also a realistic kind of mental illness where people become anxious and depressed, and when they're surrounded by doctors and family and everybody's trying to diagnose you, and you get worse and you can convince yourself that you're on the verge of death, whether you are or not. I think in this story, that's what happens to Camilla. I think Jamie sees through it a little bit. I think he's sort of the younger brother or older brother, and he's sort of scoffing at all the attention his sister's getting, and it's like, yeah, I see what's going on. I'm a young person too. I know what it feels like to need companionship, and in the end, in this case, Camilla is definitely just lonely. But as I've experienced in my own life, when you're feeling bad, when you're feeling depressed, anxious, there's a vicious cycle where you sort of cut yourself off from the world, but by cutting yourself off from the world, you reinforce the problem. You've got nobody to talk to, and you sort of cycle down this deep, dark hole. But also, the flip side of that is sometimes when you do find the bravery to get out there back in the world and fight your anxiety of doing that, you have a tendency, people like us, people who are prone to anxiety and depression, you end up feeling embarrassed by the things you do, and then you cut yourself off again. And it's really a vicious cycle. But it appears here that Camilla's found a way out. You'd have to do a sequel to find out whether it works or not long term, but I think it does. I like to think that she lives happily ever after with her dustman, who also plays the lute. But yeah, this is very much a comedy about melancholy and depression and anxiety, and a problem that is probably bigger today than it's ever been. And the sort of quarantines and things of COVID of the last couple of years probably didn't help that at all. And I can attest for that. I've gone through some dark patches during this time, and still breathing, like Camilla. And managing to smile and to eventually get myself in front of the camera every morning and talk to you folks here. So there you guys go. A Medicine for Melancholy, 1959. Stories of Ray Bradbury, story 59 of 100. Next time, we will move on to story number 60 of 200, or 60 of 100, which leaves just 40 more tales to go in this collection. That tale is The Shoreline at Sunset, also from 1959. Thank you for tuning in. Please subscribe and keep on smiling.